Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Tuesday, October 8th, 2024. Our goal here is to review the market generated information in a holistic fashion. We are intimately following the auctions narrative for both ES and NQ. If we have time, we'll theorize and add additional commentary towards the end. There is a uploaded recording of the RTH today. Please check it out if you have some time. All right, perfect. Let's get started. So we'll start off with our summary questions. Where's the market coming from, and what is price attempting to do? Again, the market is mindful of the upcoming CPI and PPI and the beginning of the real earnings season with the banks on Friday. Yesterday, the prior day, which was Monday, there was a big engulfing candle, which caught Friday by surprise. So ideally, the buyers wanted to defend the pivot from last week's low and really close back above this daily SMA. A new high will be a cherry on top, but ideally protect that low. Same situation for the NQ. They wanted to protect their last week's low, the prior week's low, and ideally close above the 5 SMA. Clearly, they performed above and beyond today. Today was a bit light on the earnings. Again, we have banks on Friday. Not much data today. Just fairly light here, mainly with Fed speakers for this week. It's kind of slammed across the board. And then we have FOMC minutes tomorrow. I can imagine that being the market anticipating that too much. Definitely more so on the CPI and PPI, and then the earnings on Friday, as we mentioned. So again, not really too much going on. Outside of the geopolitical tensions, a lot of tensions going on in the Middle East. The market is um, a bit skittish with these news reports. But we'll look at some of their price actions that makes me say that. Looking at the footprint for the daily, we understand that they accomplished their goal, but looking at the delta and the volume was a bit light, similar to yesterday, but clearly they got work done closing above the prior day's high, like an actual close. And we had some volume traded. There was an opportunity to trade at in the overnight session, but clearly no one really wanted to trade. We'll look at that on the market profile because that was in the overnight. Really not too much to say. Delta got up to about 4K. So buyers were definitely pushing today, and then they finished about half of that. So strong finish regarding the stats there, with 400 and about 30 points of range, about 80 here for the S&P 500. Same thing, lighter volume than yesterday. Again, the delta in the volume doesn't really tell the story. It's more of what price accomplished today. So again, the volume was a bit light. So say what you will, but this is somewhat expected with bullish control. Again, all this is within the Simple's candle from the middle of last month. And we mentioned that sellers were not in control until they can close below that point. And clearly today was another good example. Again, low volume traded near these lows and really didn't take it serious until we got to the 60s and above. Same thing with the delta and the buyers. Looking at the sector tracker, we can see we finished again another 1%. I believe it was 1% down and about 1% up today. So just interesting. But anyways, the leaders was technology. The leaders were technology and Nvidia. Again, they were holding down the market very much so yesterday, keeping it from spilling over, and they had more of that relative strength with the chips, primarily Nvidia. Solid day for financials and healthcare. It's good to see them green. Again, everyone is green except materials and energy. And energy, this is just interesting to see. I'm not too privy on how they're moving, but really, just decent day across the board for everyone. A bit sluggish for the industrials and utilities, but today was definitely a risk on for some of the bigger names. Even Amazon got them some almost up 2%. Okay. So again, solid day from the sectors. All right, we'll look at the market profile. Looking at the NQ. Again, if you've been watching, we've been talking about this 20K 200 area for the longest. Ideally, the buyers wanted to look above, use this as support, and continue on a retest. But it seems that they leaked much lower and aggressively finding their way back, which is exactly what we've been seeing on the daily this here. Consolidation, look below, and push up. That's exactly what's happening on the daily as well. So it's good just to see that in a bit of a fractal. But if we are to zoom in, something I wanted to show here. So there was some singles that were created today. So we'll draw these singles later on. Singles down here as well. Singles from the overnight. Actually, let's go ahead and move this back. Okay, there you go. My apologies. Can I just like lock this? Okay, that way it is a little easier to see. Okay, perfect. So we have today's session. I just thought this was interesting. So yesterday, right? We had our multi-distribution here, and not necessarily here. This is really like a normal day. This is the S&P 500 that was double distribution. So this was yesterday's session, and then we have last week's session. We won't look at the composite. We won't look that far back right now. But I just thought it was interesting that we opened up near the lower third of here, and we pushed lower. We could not take out the low of last week. Stay within this zone here that we have, which I need to give it another name. We ended up pushing through the singles from yesterday, which was Monday. And as we pushed above, we found support at that former resistance. And simple as that. No one wants to trade below those singles. So I mean, fairly simple day. We actually got a nice trend day. We had our rejection earlier in the session, in the overnight. We had our continuation. We had an opportunity to check. No one wanted to sell, and then we pushed back above. Fairly simple. It's not surprising that we were gravitating back to this all-important 2 to 300 zone, because again, once we can look above, use that as support, and then continue, that's when we'll have blue skies up here for the NQ. So it's nice to see them gravitating back to balance. Again, as annoying as this may be, trust me, because I was on the sell side today. Um, this is the most traded volume, just in general. These 2 to 300s for the 20Ks. So again, the NQ is very much in balance, and they seem to be getting a little stronger by each day that passes. It's a little cleaner here on the ES. Just bear with me because I gotta figure this shit out. Let me just do it like this. There we go. Same situation today, yesterday, last week. So we open up lower at that lower third, and we pushed. And again, here too, we did not break that low. Okay, so fair enough, we didn't break that low. We ended up consolidating, breaking through the former singles from yesterday. Use this as support, and then same situation. Even though we had our VPOC, this big node up here, we completely just grinded our way through it. We pulled back under that zone, and then just found some continuation. Again, sellers are not wanting to trade at these lower prices, so for whatever reason, these prices down here are considered cheap. So just wanted to spend a little time on that. All right, so we'll look at the intraday. Same situation that we just saw for the NQ. This is just on 138-minute candles. There was no continuation to this downside, and then just freight train price discovery higher. and now we've closed. Oh shit! Yeah, I just noticed this. Yeah, we closed above that actual range. So look out, sellers. And then we have our. That's what I messed up earlier. My all-time high little line was a little outdated. All right, so yeah, same situation here, but the ES did not close above their pivot. They tried to look above it, but just fell a bit short. But still fairly strong. They're above this gray zone, which was the VPOC from the prior day. Closed well above it and threatening this prior week's high, just by a few points. I've been mentioning recently that we haven't really seen some trend days. We got one yesterday. We got one today. Coil pushed down and we fucking stayed down. Somewhat here we pushed up and tried pulling back a little bit. No, continuation. So we're starting to see a little bit difference in the price action, and that's definitely something worth noting. Buyers were definitely pushing there. The majority of volume was near these lows, so you would imagine that we'll find some way our way back down. But no, I mean the majority of this whole candle, this was multi-distributed. There's a lot of fighting going on here, for sure. And then again, sellers just never really had control. You know, you see a lot of red in here, but the relative volume was much lower than the previous 2 hours. So again, we just kind of just sat sideways for this third bar. Then this fourth bar, where these sailors really got aggressive, and okay, they got 17 points of range, and they barely got back into the half point of the first hour candle. And that completed our squeeze requirements, and we just kind of squeezed for the majority of the day, or for the rest of the day. So it's nice to see just the higher highs and the higher lows. Just a nice trend day. Not this where you go down and you kind of poke above like that. You know, it's just a little irritating, but definitely nice trend days that we're seeing that are returning, at least for the past two sessions. For the NQ, I believe it was a little cleaner on both days. Shot down, stayed down, and then same here, a little more erect, less of a pullback for the NQ, and then we close a lot stronger, like we just saw in the profile, and the 138-minute candle as well. So again, two nice trend days. All right. So let's look at the 3-minute candles. All right, so we can see a little clearer of the way price was moving today. At least I prefer to look at it in 3-minute candles. Looking at the full session for the S&P 500, we have our start of session in here. I got to clean up my oh, because it was the big drop from the news. Yeah, so we had our overnight session that started from the prior days. We ended up opening here, opened a little higher, started to sell off a little bit. I believe this was some claims of potential bombings or something like that. It was like an unconfirmed reading. So again, this may not look like much, but I mean, this ended up being from 57.48 to 57.23, and all that was in essentially a minute. They ended up retracing some of this candle. So again, it seemed partially like they were attempting to go for the prior week's low, but they didn't get it. You can see that they fell just short. So you would assume that a big dagger like that would have some sort of continuation, but that was not the case. On the pullback and going back lower, I mean, we could barely trade at this halfway point, and then that was the case really for the remainder of that Globex section. So I mean, anytime we came down, we would find our way back up. Anytime we found our way down, we would sit sideways. We tried testing that midpoint again, and we fucking almost made a new Globex high on that initial retest. So again, this was really important. there for the ES, and then on the same situation for the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq ended up dropping from 20K11 to 19,900. So a little over 100 points. So again, we started our session off with some very strange behavior. So again, as we start essentially bull flagging, we ended up breaking through and no kind of test to get back into that range. And this brings us to the RT8 session. And quick note, even with all this bear flag behavior here, we didn't get above the prior session's initial balance flow. Just a thought. So while this does seem extremely bullish, given the bullish control over the highest, the intermediate, and the short term daily momentum, this was a very strong start for sure. But when you're zooming out, we're still below the prior day's initial balance flow. So again, just some sort of context. Cool. So we'll bring out the RT8 session. All right, cool. And I've updated some of my not my indicators, but some of my studies. So these are still reflecting the um, full session data. So again, we ended up with the context of that big drift up that we had, the spike down and then the drift up. We didn't have any real sort of pullbacks back into that range. Actually, one moment, let me just do the replay because the replay has been working out well. All right, we'll get this and we'll get this started. All right, so this is going to be the ES. And again, given all that context that we had with the drift up, see how we respond here. Oh, I have this on space, yes. Okay, so again, when we start off, the first 3 to 4 candles, very somewhat of a tight range. Somewhat of a tight range, about 10 points of the initial balance. So a bit choppy, if you will. It looks like an initial open drive at first. But again, we're starting to cradle here near these lows. And again, we're nowhere near the full session VWAP as of yet. So you would assume possibly open auction, but we're still below this midpoint so far. Okay, so we end up making our new high and we exit close. And again, you can watch this, the recording on the DOM. So as we're making our new high, we have fully engulfed this potential open auction and we're firmly above the open. As we finish the A bracket, you can see that we are channeling above this 5 smoothing average, which is typically a bullish sign. Okay, so we don't have any kind of data or anything like that, but we're still pushing higher within this B bracket. So as we're pushing higher and we fully taken this overnight high, which we're already right there, it just took us a little while to get there. So I mean, as we ended up going through the overnight high, we're still below this IB mid and below the open, but we're finding our way through with this second bracket. So as we're pushing higher, we do find some sort of turbulence. This is not unexpected as we are still coming from the prior day's range. So again, we're extremely bullish at this point, and we're bear flagging. We can't, anytime we touch the overnight low, we're springing back up. All right, and I mean, this is just really just grinding here. I mean, at this point, we can't trade under the overnight high, which is definitely going to be a bullish sign. And then this was just kind of just wild. This happened fairly quickly. This was all 1 minute. So again, that took us through the open, the prior IB high, and the high of the prior day, which makes sense. A shitload of stops. And then we had a fair amount of continuation. And we just began to build volume somewhat sideways. You still would assume this is still pretty bullish as we're genuinely trending up this 5 smoothing average. This is our first time closing below it. We had a couple closes there. Tried to fall back a little lower to this initial balance high, and we're starting to grind back up that 5 smoothing average again. I'll go ahead and speed this up and doubling the speed actually. And then essentially we just grinded for the most part. You would assume that this high will eventually be broken. It just took a while. I mean, we were just bear flagging for the longest. I mean, again, they couldn't stay below this halfway point of this initial candle. And once we did break it, I believe this was around some damn news as well, if I'm not mistaken. We ended up finding our way back to the initial balance high and even retested that fucking overnight high. And we had the same response as we did earlier. And this is essentially what gave us our trend day. I'll go ahead and speed that up. And they eventually got that high. Pretty simple for the most part. Again, trading is in real time. I got my ass kicked, so I don't make it seem like I'm perfect or anything. But essentially, we had an open test drive using the overnight levels as support, which was the level that we were just already sitting at. So again, very much urgency with the buying. We impulse through. We consolidated to the right. We impulse through. We consolidate through the right. And just ended up grinding our way up. Sellers wasn't really too aggressive. Buyers had no reason to kind of push prices. Sellers were trapped. Pretty simple. If I had to give a trade of the day or anything using the hindsight that we have now, using S&P 500, you definitely would have been a little better doing the NQ, which we'll look at shortly. But the breakouts really did make sense in time, giving the as much space as we were having between each high. But just in real time, I didn't really feel too comfortable doing it. But seeing the way that they were behaving around this overnight high, especially when that's essentially where we started, getting one of these retests here really did make sense. Even in hindsight, I would be a little hesitant of buying here as you're still under the DGPs or right at the DGPs. But given the context that we have from the overnight session with the rally, you just had to be ready to buy today. But open test drive, push up on that retest back into that prior range. They tried to get back to the open, but they couldn't. Essentially, really, your best buying point for my system would be around the overnight high. I'm not going to spend too much on the NQ because we just watched on the ES, but essentially they were a little more bullish, a little less of the cradling that we're seeing here, and this is more just like straight sideways and then a strong push up. Their retest was the initial balance high opposed to the overnight high. So again, same buying opportunity, initial balance high here, and then the overnight high for the ES. Now where your target would be, I do not know. And that's something that I need to work on for my own system. So we'll go ahead and cut it there. Solid day for the buyers. Again, we've been mentioning the past couple of days that although this may be a little scary for the buyers for some the selling pressure that we're seeing at random, this is 100% still bullish control, and this is more evidence for today. So even a good reminder for myself, to be honest. So we'll get the buyers a good nine or honestly 10 for today. The fact that they created singles in the overnight session and defended them. There was no sort of pullback at all in this RTH session. We stepped our way higher, Not only did we have a trend day yesterday, we had another one for today to the upside. So again, solid performance on their end. And then for the NQ, yeah, I think for the ES and NQ, we'll give them both about a good 8 to 9, possibly a 10 um, on the NQ, just given their performance. But outside of that, we'll go ahead and drop it there. For the overnight session, ideally they want to keep the price above the 50% line. Ideally, the smooth and average as support, the daily simple moving average rather on a daily as support. Really, other than that, I mean, buyers have full control. We'll see where we are when it comes to CPI, but solid day. I just need to clean up my singles on the market profile, and we'll be back for tomorrow. All right.